waiting room now. Thank you all for joining us this morning. So our webinar this morning is on the South African market, and I'm delighted to be joined by Mark from Prof Consulting Group and Sean and Nikki over in South Africa. So many of you may know Mark already from he has been the FDEA in-market partner for Australia and New Zealand for some time now, and he's recently joined us as our South African in-market partner. So we're delighted to hear what he and his colleagues have got to say about the market, and yeah, really delighted to have them here this morning. So please do let me know if there's any problems with sound as we go through. The webinar is being recorded and will be sent round to you afterwards by email. And then if you've got any questions, do just put your hand up, put them in the chat box, or there'll be some time at the end if you want to come off mute and ask questions to Mark, Nikki and Sean afterwards. So I'm going to hand over to Mark, and I'm just going to share my screen. Mark, over to you.
Mel, thank you very much, and thank you to the FDEA for the opportunity this morning. I think having come back from Cape Town over the Christmas period, I was amazed by the standard of retail within the market and the opportunities that I think it creates for food and drink businesses looking at that market as part of their strategic growth strategy. And I'm delighted to have the opportunity to welcome two of my colleagues here. So Sean Fluke, who's held senior commercial roles within two of the South Africa's largest retailers, Woolworths and Pick n Pay, and Nikki, who's a product specialist, has also held senior product roles across Pick n Pay and Woolworths. So what we've got for you on the call today is an example of the expertise that Prof can bring to help your business grow, but people that can give you real-time insights about the opportunities and what's moving in the South African market. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Sean and Nikki, and looking forward to the time ahead. Thank you, Mel.
Great, thanks, Mel. Mark, maybe we want to move the slides along. I think we can move through 2 slides. Really good for us to be addressing you guys this afternoon. What we can move one forward as well there. What we thought we'd do is really start with a high level view in the context of where we are from a country and a market perspective, and then we hope to bring that and take it down to a level of understanding of what opportunities present themselves from a retail and certainly from a overall market perspective. So Nikki and I don't know if you want to, anything you want to say first before we kick off?
I think it's wonderful to be here with Sean, and we're very excited to be sharing some of the insights of our beautiful market. We're particularly proud, actually, of the South African retail landscape, and so looking forward to sharing this with you. Sean and I, by the way, have worked together for 27 years in various environments, so I often refer to him a little bit like my work husband. We have a lot of common shared understanding, and it's lovely to be here representing South Africa today.
Brilliant, thanks. So let's just take an umbrella view from a GDP perspective. The country has certainly been underperforming, and for many reasons in the last while, and certainly looking at the growth that we're experiencing more recently, we will talk to that. There's a more positive sentiment that's starting to flow through. And that's subsequent to the introduction of the government of national unity and a lot more of a business focus that's starting to shift in the country. Unemployment is a massive challenge, and one that's is not new, and certainly there are a lot of initiatives that are being put in place to address that. We've seen more, like the December data just came out. We saw an improvement of about 1.5%. But certainly a massive challenge and a key focus. One of the challenges that have been from a customer sentiment perspective, we're starting to see a shift in customer sentiment from record lows, and we're starting to get to reasonable sense now that from a customer perspective, things are moving in the right direction. Maybe we can just take the next slide. Brilliant. Just at a retail level, just to give you a broader sense of the size of the markets, the formal market is around 640 billion rand in terms, growing at around 4%. And that's, sorry, the screen seems to have gone. There you go. Growing at around 4%, and we are seeing negative volume declines, roughly around 2% in the market. But what we're seeing in the formal market is an improving trend. So in the last quarter, we saw growth at a higher level, and certainly over the November-December period, we're starting to see more reasonable levels, closer to almost getting to double digit, which is encouraging. Just for everybody to know, the formal market is smaller than the informal market. So we will address a slide a bit later where it shows that we really are dealing with two segments on the market. But the informal market and the opportunity that presents itself in that space is significant. It is greater than the formal market. Next slide, please.
So we're just going to be sharing a video. I think it's a lovely overview of South Africa and the markets also in Africa. So on the next slide, when we get there, you'll see it's really just talking about how what it looks like in our country and what the customer looks like. So I know that they're trying to find, obviously, the video link.
Sorry, it's having a little problem here. I'm just going to unshare for a minute. It wasn't letting me move slides along. No?
Maybe move to the next slide. Yeah.
Yeah. Apologies with this. It's seems to be having a bit of a lag. Let me just see if I can move it along in the background. Second. Okay, minutes. Sorry about this. Love a little bit of technical difficulty on a webinar.
That's okay, Mel. No problem. No problem.
If this works. I think always when there's a video involved, it sometimes finds it a bit tricky. Right, here we go.
Sing it, I've been thinking about you. Only you, only you. Ngiyabonga ifikile incwadi. Ithi wena uyazwinikile. Ithi wena uyabuya. Iyazoza inhliziyo. Kabe sikudama.
Thank you. Can we move to the next slide?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Great. I hope that gave some sort of insights into Africa and South Africa particularly. I've just flown in from being in Johannesburg for the last few days, and actually Cape Town is so different to Johannesburg. Johannesburg feels very much like Africa. And when you're here in the Cape, it does feel quite different. But I think the key things that are critical to understand is this whole issue of affordability. Now, affordability means a very different level of price consciousness in our area of the world than yours. Customers in general buy on specials. They spend a lot of time looking at the tabloids to find the best store, and they shop across multiple stores in order to get the benefits of those specials. One of the things that's interesting, because of course we know health is such a massive trend, but in South Africa it has a slightly different slant, because in our customer base we see sort of the top end customer who's looking for more plant-based type of options, who's driving health as you would know it, but certainly in the middle and lower classes there is a definite shift where people are more aware of their health, because high blood pressure and diabetes are massive concerns in our country. So there is definitely a focus on healthier products, and sustainability is also playing a factor. What we are seeing is a lot of innovation, and we, of course, me specifically, have been absolutely delighted to see the growth in the stores where innovation has been focused. And e-commerce has been a big, big growth point in our country. In 2020, really, with COVID, e-commerce sort of launched, and it's really shown phenomenal growth, and Sean will talk to that just now. Next slide. It is lagging again. I'll just keep talking because the slide will come up, and it's really talking about the South African trends. And what I've tried to do is just unpack it a little bit, because if we look at the South African customer, it's very split. And this is as a result really of income. And we talk to similar trends across the entire demographic, but it's split out with different need states in the lower LSMs to the higher LSMs. So the slide really that I've put up is talking to these different key trends that we see coming through. Convenience is a factor, but what convenience means in the top end is buying the ready meal or the frozen meal that's in the deep freeze and having that for dinner. In the bottom end, convenience talks to the fact that our customer shops as part of the commute. They shop on their way home next to the taxi rank, and they want to be able to access that food through being able to buy it when they are actually at the taxi rank. So this is the slide. I think there is a lot of type in here, but I wanted to give a good overview, because things like sustainability and the responsible shopper, yes, it's absolutely critical in the top end, but in the bottom end, it's slightly different. And you can see there I've split it across a blue and red color, the red being the lower LSM. I have put the income of those segments in there. And certainly from our side, what we do when we're looking at these trends is we say, okay, have we addressed the top end? And then how do we take that? Often a lot more complex into the bottom end and look at opportunities in this space, because this is the majority of our country sitting in that bottom end banner. So I won't talk to the detail that sits underneath it. I think you'll have the slide, but it's just to unpack a little bit around our South African customer trends. Thank you. Next slide.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, very much appreciated. And they found it as well. The haulage.
Mark, you need to mute.
Place.
It's not me.
Oh, it's not
So
you.
they found it.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Cheers. Yeah. Did everything go in?
Oh, sorry, I think somebody's on unmute. If you could just mute yourself because we can hear your conversation.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Good. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Cheers. Bye.
At least we know it's a happy customer, Mel, so that's positive, yeah? Another export opportunity.
There we go. I think I've muted them now. There we go.
Brilliant.
Please continue.
All right, let's just quickly look at the landscape, the retail landscape. We'll unpack it over 2 slides, but I think really important thing just to give a sense of how traditional trade is run in South Africa, which we'll talk to, and then we'll talk to how the retailers play in the different segments that we refer to, the higher LSM and the lower LSM spaces. But the dominant retail group in South Africa is the Shoprite Group. They've made up on several banners. They're also the fastest growing retailer in the country with solid double-digit growth and an extensive chain. And I'll unpack it on the next slide. We'll show how the different banners play out. And they across their different banners play in the higher and the lower LSM. Pick n Pay is used to be the market leader many years ago, is going through a consolidation phase as we speak, but still, sizable market share player, solid double-digit market share player, and is predominantly made up with a corporate business and a franchise business. So half of the business is focused on franchise and half focused on corporate. Also a business that extends beyond grocery retail, also into clothing, with a significant growth in clothing as well, which is a differentiator in the market currently. Woolworths, as we would all know, is more obviously at the higher end of the market. Once again, you'd refer to them as a big small store business. Their formats are generally a lot more drive a very high trading density, smaller footprints, limited range, but certainly tailored range focused on quality, innovation, and as they say, the difference. And then we've got Spar across pretty much across the market, which plays in the higher and lower LSM. But we'll unpack it quickly on one more slide if we can go there, just to give you a sense of how the banners play. I think it'll come up now. There you go. So just looking at the segments of the market, and you could see the size and scale of what sits in what we call the lower LSM, and then the higher LSM, and just across the top you'll see that the Shoprite Group trades with different banners. So there's the USAVE format, which really competes at the lowest end of the market, and that banner would compete. Go on mute there, Mark. That banner will compete head to head with Boxer, which has more recently just been listed, or the IPO was recent, I think in November. But that's really at the lower end of the market, and then you'll see that the Shoprite banner really plays into the higher end, and a lot of that's around proximity and rural towns. And then you've got the Checkers banner, which is focused more at the top end, and certainly being seen in current times as a direct competitor for the highest LSM customer, being Woolworths. Pick n Pay plays across certainly across all of the LSMs, more towards the middle of the lower income, not as far down as a Boxer per se, and really does compete at the higher end, but it's more middle market, as you'll see, as opposed to where the Checkers Group is and the Woolworths Group. Food Lovers Market is privately owned chain, and probably around 300 odd sites across the country. but very much play into that middle market, showing significant growth. And their model is predominantly focusing on a fresh model with an expanding grocery offer. Also looking as a business to grow a lot of private label in their space. So that just gives you a bit of a sense of the landscape of the major retailers. Once again, there's a big wholesale base which we can discuss as well at another time. All right, maybe the next slide.
This dog.
Mark, you may want to mute. There we go. Can we go to the next slide? All right, and then just at a format level, in the South African context, there is a hypermarket format, which is consistent with what's around the world. There is a lot of work being done across the different retailers to optimize hypermarkets. They're typical big boxes. They're not as efficient as they used to be, and certainly with the shift to online and convenience, that's certainly a format that's under pressure. Supermarketing and convenience is the bulk of all the retail across the space, and as we're seeing, there is a focusing on building smaller, more proximity-based stores, as opposed to the bigger supermarkets of old. Forecourts are expanding across all of the major fuel companies, and we're seeing that not only expanding in the context of putting down footprint, but certainly changing proposition, which in terms of their range, extending ranges, and certainly focusing on evening meal opportunities, which is becoming a bigger area. We've got a slide on online. It's relevant to the shift in the market, and I'll quantify it when we get there. But we've seen rapid growth in the online space, whether it be through online broadly, whether it be through scheduled delivery, or whether it be on demand. Since COVID, there's been a fundamental change in the dynamics within the market, and online is certainly been spearheading that. Just go to the next slide. All right, so just unpacking online. From an SA online perspective, it's around 6% of total sales as it currently stands, but there's been significant growth, and it has been so for at least for the last 4 or 5 years. Solid double-digit growth. We're seeing some of the retailers, presenting results even in this week that are still talking around between 30 and 50% growth, and that's on 50 to 100% base growth. So it certainly continues to drive. The market is around 17 billion, and as you can see, the overall market around 30% growth, and it is poised to get to around 100 billion in the coming years. So certainly a big shift. One of the things that's worth noting in the market is that on demand, and Checkers 60/60 leads that. There's been significant growth in that, but it's once again quite specific to the higher end of the market. I'd probably hazard a guess that it's around double-digit of contribution of sales now in those businesses. But you would expect it. You're not going to expect it to double in size in the next 2 to 5 years, because it is really talking to a very specific customer base. But it has been a catalyst for growth for them, and it has been a catalyst of shifting customer perception, and certainly one that's been used quite significantly.
Just interesting on this, Amazon has very recently entered the market in South Africa. So they are not yet in food, but they have built a beautiful head office not far from here, and certainly poised to see some growth in that retailer.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to chat a little bit about private label. I think private label is incredibly important in retail here. It's contributing to between 20 and 25% of sales, but there has been rapid growth in private label, definitely since COVID. And there's definitely an investment from retail into the private label offer. You can see there's a growth of approximately 7.5% year on year. It is the same as everywhere else in the world. In general, we see that where there is a trusted brand, customers are choosing to shop into the private label products as they would everywhere else. And I think there's a definite commitment from customers once they start buying into it because of the price that they repurchase. There's been great staying power, and certainly from our side, we watch that space very, very closely. That is where there is quite a lot of innovation happening, particularly in the top end, is in the private label space. Confined brands have also shown some strong growth, and that's been specifically to the lower end of the market, which has been very interesting, where they have positioned brands in that segment. Brands are very loyal, but they have positioned themselves with confined brands that really stand strongly up against the branded product. So obviously we know from a retail point of view, it's talking to higher profit margins and strengthening the brand loyalty. But for customers, it's really around cost-effective options, as it would be in the rest of the world. Next slide. Okay, so we talk about, what's in it for retailers and how do they go about looking for suppliers. I think some of the key things that we see is it's very different in different retailers. In the partnership space, there is, particularly in the Woolworths model, a huge amount of loyalty to those suppliers. They have built those relationships, they build the business together, and certainly it's a long-term plan. So it's a difficult market to enter at that end of the market because a lot of those supplier relationships are very tied up. But there's certainly opportunities in other parts of the market. And we have, as having played in the space of own brand for so many years, we have considerable gaps in manufacturing, which lead to opportunities. And that for us is an ongoing challenge because there is just not the expertise nor the volume in the South African manufacturing space in some categories to be able to fill those gaps. So I think that talks to opportunities, particularly for partnerships, and that would then be an entry into the retail landscape in South Africa. There is this very relationship kind of trust and negotiation, etc., that would happen in any big retailer. We all know the mentality of the buyer, and we all know that getting into those engagements is tricky. And I think one of the advantages that we have is that we have obviously a lot of relationships with a lot of these key role players in the South African business space. Next slide.
So just how do we win in the market? And it really comes down to fundamentally getting a clear understanding of the roles of the retailers within the space and the customers they target. We think there's definitely significant opportunities if we target it, very clear on the size of the opportunity. In terms of the competition and understanding, the role of the categories and getting a deeper understanding of that opportunity will certainly hold you in good stead. The target customer groups, whether it be in private label, whether it be manufacturing, whether it be just in terms of innovation and range, being very clear about who we target and how that's going to be adopted. Certainly a move in the right direction. Loyalty and e-commerce in South Africa, as we know, it's growing as it has around the world. But just to understand that role of loyalty and where the synergies exist, particularly across some of the retailers. Differentiation and innovation, there is certainly significant opportunities. Nikki's spoken about, health as a focus, but they're, across the different retailers as they're playing in their specific market segments, there certainly is room for innovation. And certainly in categories which are generally higher margin than not. And the big one here is around relationships and understanding how to access the retailers, understanding how to access the producers, and having those relationships. So typically this would how you want to enter into any market, but certainly having a clear understanding of these aspects and at the right level of focus and depth is key.
Just in summary, I think good to know that retail is the third largest sector in our economy. We're showing promising growth. It's a wonderful time to live here, and it's a wonderful time to be in the market here. And one of the things that's been fascinating for me is I've just sold my house here to relocate to another suburb. And so many of the people that have come to see it are actually people that are coming from the UK back into South Africa because they feel that there's a lot of future here. So I think there is a lovely energy about the place, and you can definitely sense it in the market. Obviously, we need to be very clear around the fact that we have to have these tailored approaches. It's not a one size fits all. And of course, because of that, there are complexities. But I think when you start to unpack what those look like, there's definitely opportunity, and that's exciting. We've seen innovation driving growth. There's a very lovely stat out which talks to the fact that the innovation in the branded space is actually what really is driving the growth in that space, which is exciting for the market. Customers are looking for new things. They want new things. It's not just in the UK, it's everywhere, and certainly it's here in South Africa. And then just getting down into some of the key things around customer categories and the market insights. It's really crucial to get to the bottom of those and then hopefully to succeed. So that's it from us. I don't know if there's any questions. I do hope that has sort of stimulated some appetite, and yeah, we're happy to take questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Sean and Nikki. And sorry about the generally laggy presentation, but we got through it. No, that was really insightful. Yeah, I just had a general question, really about the sort of general perception of British brands with South African consumers. Obviously, much of the world thinks we're heritage brands and that kind of thing. Yeah, just really sort of a general question around that.
I think there's some dearly loved British brands here, and we can talk to what they are, and I'm sure that you'd know exactly what they are. I mean, if you think of the tea category, I mean, what would tea be without Twinings, right? There's just no ways that's not going to be a strong category. And across the piece, in general in retail, there are segments in the store which have imported brands. There's a lot of UK brands that sit in that space. And people definitely search them out. But it's less and less so as the bottom end of the market grows. And I think those heritage traditional brands, people buy at special occasions, look forward to Christmas and buying those quality streets or whatever they might be. I think that loyalty is never going to go.
Mel, I think if I could jump in on that one, I think what we are seeing in multiple markets at the minute is the growth of that food of the world category. And I think to Nikki's point, if you're a food and drink business targeting South Africa, are you targeting that food of the world category and helping the buyer there, or are you targeting the main category in the grocery aisle, or are you looking to go on in both, like we are seeing with some UK brands in other markets at the moment? But I think also, one of the areas that really resonated with me was looking at the specialty cheese category and how there's a clear differentiation between South African produced cheese and cheese imported, and the strength of some of our UK cheese businesses into supplying those categories. So, I think it's a game of two halves very clearly. And I think success really is about understanding where you want to target within which particular retailer, ultimately where your consumers are shopping, so you can track that back through their journey, and then deciding, do you want to be in the world of foods, or do you want to be alongside your direct competing products, and how you resonate with consumers in that area.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions that you'd like to ask? If you just take yourself off mute.
Yes, good morning. I'm Olivier. I'm the export manager at Dorsam Foods. It means we are the biggest gluten-free manufacturers, breakfast cereals, pasta, and flours. I went to South Africa on vacation on holiday 2 weeks ago in Cape Town. Amazing country, really safe, lovely weather, very cheap. Two questions for me. The one is very weak against the sterling. It's 2.3. For us, it's great when you go on vacation, but it's not great for you when you import food products. How do you manage the currency issue? And second thing, is it better to go direct to see like people like Food Lovers or Pick and Pay? At the moment, I've got a small distributors in Durban where it's not performing well. Should I go direct? What do you think, please?
I can handle both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, good questions. The first thing, obviously, the currency and exchange rate is always going to be a challenge. And certainly we've got to pick your categories, and that's why the focus would be, as we said, there is room for price point. There certainly is in the customer segments a demand for your product specifically. And you can test higher price points, which does allow certainly to deal with the currency aspect of it. And we do have products, as Nick has referred to, that's constantly being imported out of Europe into South Africa, and we're able to deal with that. To the second point of your second question, it depends on the category, and it's going to depend on the retailer in terms of whether you go through an intermediary or whether you go direct. Obviously, the key aspect is going to be able to maintain that supply chain, maintain availability, and everything that goes with it. So, what we could do with you, if you're interested, is explore some opportunities where we can look at the model. And Food Lovers, for example, isn't as centralized a business as the likes of a Pick and Pay is, for example, who runs a centralized model. And ShopRite Checkers runs a centralized model. But for my part, it'd be make sure you get your target customer right in the right retailer, because that's going to fundamentally determine your penetration and your success. It's hearing the categories you're referring to, I'd be very specific.
Okay, thank you. We'll be in touch after.
Thank you. There's another question in the chat box from Tudor Rose. He's asked about the currency as well. Also said he's had previous challenges with getting payments out of the market in the past. Any insights on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the specifics are, but I mean, there's a lot of trade up and down. There shouldn't be. It's all about making sure that we get the right governance and controls in place. I think the retailers that we've encountered and experienced, generally speaking, that shouldn't be of concern at all. Not a payment point. I'm not sure what the issue was there. We're also, as much as we're talking about product coming in, there's also opportunities around exporting out of South Africa. And there's significant opportunities in that regard as well. So, dealing with currency and dealing with payments is something that's just how we set it up correctly.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions?
I have a question. Hi, it's Cheryl Brett from Coombe Castle International. Let me try and get my video on, which is quite a challenge. 1 second.
No worries.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Hiya.
Hi. We were in the South African market several years ago with Pick and Pay. We've since had quite a lot of inquiries from ShopRite Direct, but for the Checkers part of the business, and also through Woolworths, but via 2 distributors, which is fine. We can deal with all of them in quite a specific way. It's quite apt because this morning I had the distributor wants us to work on a private label for Woolworths, has asked about if we can offer exclusivity. So it's a bit challenging for a private label product to ask for exclusivity, especially given that they haven't given any volumes or that kind of thing. I just really wanted to get your view and your thoughts on that.
Shall I talk to that?
No, you can go. I've got a view as well. Go.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear yours.
No, go.
So Woolworths do tend to try and tie suppliers into exclusivity. because they launch, or everything in Woolworths is basically private label. They only take very few key leading brands. I'm not sure exactly what your products are, but the size of the Woolworths market relative to the size of the ShopRite market is minute, really. And I think what has happened in that space is that a lot of customers have switched out of buying everything at Woolies and into buying more affordable options in the ShopRite Shakers space. Saying that, however, working with Woolworths is, I think, a lot easier than working with ShopRite Shakers. So I think it's got its upside and its downside. I would need to understand a little bit more about what your products are and whatever to really be able to talk with much clearer direction.
Okay.
To hear what you say, Sean.
It's in the landscape currently. Within the ShopRite group, there's obviously the Checkers banner, and they're very much targeting the higher LSM customer or the affluent customer, and in their strategy, they certainly will be open to not only into a private label context, but also probably open in a branded context, whereas Woolworths would be different to that. Just and in the Woolworths context, exactly what Nikki's saying. I mean, that's the business model, isn't it? It's differentiation through exclusivity, and that's where innovation is driven. They do sell branded products, as you know, but it's really around a limited catalog, and it's about completing the main shop, as you would call it. But the size of the prize is where I would be asking questions, and it's really around exactly that size, scale, and both of them are central distribution. Both of them will be easy enough to manage. In terms of listing, it's really going to be around target customer. It's really going to be around price point that you can attract. Those are the kind of conversations that I would suggest you have before you make that choice. The other retailers are not going to be as focused on private label at the moment.
Okay, well, I've got some decisions to make, but thank you for the insight. It's I get it in all of the markets that I work in, but it came as a bit of a surprise this morning because I kind of want to kick it into the long grass and not want to answer it, but I guess I'm going to be forced into a corner at some point. But anyway, I'm sure I'll deal with it in the right way. Thank you so much.
Welcome to reach out if you need any more help.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We've got another question from Neil in the chat box, just asking for any advice on getting products into the on-trade HoReCa channels.
That's gonna.
I'm just trying to think what's going to be the right approach there. Maybe what we can do is let me do some investigation, come back with a view, if that'll help.
I'll put you in touch. Yeah. Are there any sort of major distributors that work in that field, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there would be, and I think that's the point. It requires a little bit more thought.
Yeah.
And certainly, investigation, and we could potentially come back and help.
Lovely. Any more questions? No, it looks like we've come to the end of the questions. Well, thank you so much, both of you. Really insightful. And what we'll do is, like I said, we'll share the recording of the presentation, we'll share the slides and also contact details, so you can get in touch with Mark, Sean and Nikki if you've got any specific questions. Yeah, so thank you very much to all of you for attending this morning. And yeah, just to say, Mark, I believe you're going out to Gulf Food. I don't know if any of the people.
Yes, this time next week be somewhere warmer, Mel.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that.
Yeah,
looking forward to that very much.
Yeah.
And also Nikki and I and Sean will be at Gulf Food in South Africa later in the year. Where I hear it's going to be a lot colder, but a lot happening, and looking forward to spending time in those markets before being in Australia in 10 days' time.
Yeah, and Mark, and do have a check on the member portal. There are now events in the diary for Mark to do presentation on insights to Australia and New Zealand. So please do have a look at that. And Mark will be joining us at the Summer Network Forum on the 4th of June as well. So glad to have him there too. Yeah, tickets for that are currently on sale, and the early bird tickets end tomorrow. So if you do want to get some cheaper tickets, definitely log on and get those before the end of tomorrow. Yeah, so thank you very much. Thank you again for your time this morning, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Mel,
Have a
thanks very
great-
much. Thanks, Nikki. Thanks, Sean. Talk soon. Thank you.
All the best.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.